This is a railroad spike, garden variety steel, maybe 4140. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But it's an ordinary railroad spike who spent years or maybe decades doing his job, helping to hold down a piece of railroad track, firmly attached, on his part, to a railroad tie. It was a thankless job that had to be done, and he did it well. Now let's just imagine for a minute that this spike is alive and sentient. That means that he can think. And let's just imagine that he can speak and he can feel pain, but he can't see. He's stone blind. My forge right now is probably about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot, and ready to do some work. What do you think this spike would say right now? He may scream, he may curse, he may bellow. Get me out! This will destroy me. I hate this. Maybe he says, I hate you. Maybe he asks the question, why me? And what about one of those other spikes? Why not one of them? Now, if you're with me and you're imagining this situation, what might this spike say when he's removed, when he's pulled out? Phew, I made it. Or it's about time. But the spike doesn't see the lining die or the power hammer. So what he learns through this process is that not only does the heat of the forge hurt, not only is it agonizing, but it makes him soft and weak and non-magnetic. And it causes scale to grow at the surface, and he shrinks. As the scale grows, he becomes smaller. Slowly and relentlessly, he becomes smaller and smaller. And then, suddenly, with no warning, as far as he can tell, begins a series of what must seem brutal and painful and pointless calamities. Because over and over, he is pulled unceremoniously out of the heat of the forge, but not to rest, not to recover, not to be restored, but to be bashed and bent and flattened and twisted and bruised beyond recognition. No one would be able to recognize him or identify him after a short time in the forging processes. And at this point, all he knows is, all he can think is, that's it. I'm wrecked. I've lost everything. And my life, as I knew it, is over. The lesson that has emerged from all of this, for me, becomes powerful when we think of the forge in that terrible but useful environment as the adversity in our lives, the difficulty and the pain that is part of every life, part of what it means to be human. We think of the forge like that. Now, if you are not experiencing real and almost overwhelming adversity right now, you probably did sometime in your past, and you certainly will sometime in the days or years or decades ahead. Because sickness and accident and betrayal and rejection and financial reversal and death and divorce and violence, these kinds of adversity are part of mortality. And it's real and it's all around us, and it can be too much to bear. But unlike the spike, who has no choice whatsoever in what happens to him in or out of the forge, as men and women with the power to choose, even though we cannot refuse to experience adversity, we can refuse to be shaped while we are soft. We can refuse the hammer. We can refuse the anvil. We can refuse the wrench. We can refuse the grinder. We cannot avoid the adversity, the forge itself, but we can say in our heart, while we are in our extremity, yeah, I hate this. This is just not fair. But I will never change. You cannot make me change. We're free to do that. And so we're not changed by our journey, by our adversity. We simply soak in the heat. We simply scale away and become hardened and brittle and resentful, cracked, maybe defensive, and ugly and useless. But there's another possibility. Now, in the New Testament, the record of Matthew and Mark and Luke, there's a very, very consistent description of how Jesus reacted to his overwhelming adversity that began in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Matthew records it like this. And he went a little further, and he fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. Can you see what he did there? I imagine, and I speculate, and maybe I shouldn't, but I think he might have been thinking, I'm not sure I can do this. I don't want to do this. And then, in a moment of clarity, came the powerful, powerful answer. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And I'll tell you what I have seen. I've seen it in the lives of others, more than I've seen it in my own. But if we, in our extremity, in those moments or hours or days or years of our life, when the pain is simply too great, if we can say in our heart, if we can say in our prayers, even occasionally, as we cry out, as we lament, if we can even occasionally say, I hate this, take this away from me. But if I have to pass through it, if you can show me what you want me to learn, if you can show me how you want me to change, I promise I will try to do it. And in that moment, He is free to shape us. He is free to take advantage of the condition of softness and teachability and flexibility and wisdom that can come in the midst of our adversity to begin to turn us into something new, like this spike. Because there's nothing that anyone could have said to make this spike believe what it was that waited inside of him to be revealed through the adversity and the shaping. No one could have made him believe that there was beauty and additional function and usefulness and the ability to protect. No one could have convinced him that from his extremity would come a new life and a new purpose. And I've often wondered, and I have seen in the lives of those who have meant the most to me, that at some point we can be most surprised by how we fit in His hand. Thank you for watching Essential Craftsman. Keep up the good work.